The alarm on Carla Jensen's phone erupted at 9:30 p.m., shattering the quiet of her downtown apartment. She silenced it with practiced efficiency, her eyes already open. 4 years of graveyard shifts had trained her body to wake before the alarm even sounded. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. You're up already? Marcus mumbled from his side of the king-sized bed, the one they'd bought on credit because he insisted a pharmaceutical sales rep and his future wife needed to project success. Big night, Carla said, already heading to the bathroom. New chief of operations starts tomorrow. Tonight's numbers matter. Marcus propped himself up on one elbow, his perfectly styled hair somehow still immaculate despite sleep. And don't let the old people slow you down, babe. You need to impress the new boss with that efficiency record of yours. Carla paused at the bathroom door, something uncomfortable flickering in her chest. But Marcus was smiling, that confident smile that had first attracted her at the hospital pharmaceutical presentation 3 years ago, and the feeling passed. I know, I won't. 20 minutes later, she was dressed in fresh scrubs, her long dark hair pulled into a tight bun, makeup minimal but professional. Marcus kissed her goodbye at the door, already scrolling through his phone. Don't forget we need to put another deposit on the venue this week. The Riverside costs a fortune, but everyone who matters will be there. Everyone who matters. The phrase echoed in Carla's mind as she drove through the empty streets toward Metropolitan General Hospital. Once, she would have questioned what that meant. Who decided who mattered? But that was before 4 years of overcrowded ERs, before the constant pressure to see more patients faster, before her dreams of medical school drowned in student loan debt and impossible financial realities. Now she knew. The people who mattered were the ones who would advance her career, improve her metrics, and help her climb out of the hole she'd been born into. The hospital parking garage was nearly full even at 10:45 p.m. Metropolitan General never slept. Carla badged in through the staff entrance and made her way to the ER, her sneakers silent on the polished floors. The nurses' station was chaos. It always was. But Carla had learned to find peace in the chaos, to impose order through sheer will and efficiency. Carla, Aisha Williams looked up from a chart, her kind face lined with exhaustion. At 42, Aisha had been an ER nurse for 18 years. And it showed in every tired movement. Thank God, we're drowning tonight. Carla pulled up the staff dashboard on one of the computers. Her eyes immediately found her name at the top of the efficiency rankings. Fastest patient turnover in the department, fewest complaints. Dr. Brandon Hale's star performer. Looks like I'm maintaining the standard, Carla said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. Aisha glanced at the screen and something sad crossed her face. You know, sometimes slower is better. Mrs. Henderson in bed 12 has been asking for. I'll check the board and prioritize. Carla interrupted smoothly. She'd heard this before from Aisha, the gentle suggestions that she should spend more time with patients, really listen to them. But Aisha's metrics were consistently in the bottom quarter of the department. Compassion didn't pay the bills or impress the administration. Her phone buzzed. A call from Sunset Gardens Nursing Home, where grandmother Ruby lived. She declined it. She'd call back on her break. Ruby would understand. Ruby always understood. Except the uncomfortable feeling flickered again, stronger this time. A memory surfaced unbidden. Herself at 12, orphaned and terrified, and Ruby's gentle hands teaching her to wrap a bandage. Nursing is about seeing people, baby, really seeing them, not just their bodies, but their hearts. Carla, Dr. Brandon Hale's voice cut through the memory. He stood at the nurse's station, his white coat crisp despite the late hour, his smile carefully calculated. Quick word? They stepped into the supply closet, the unofficial location for private conversations in the overcrowded ER. The new chief starts tomorrow, Dr. Margaret Chen. Apparently, she's some kind of patient care reform crusader. Tonight matters, Carla. Your numbers are exactly what this department needs to show we're running efficiently. I won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why you're going places. He glanced at his phone. Keep doing what you're doing. Efficient triage, quick turnover, no complaints. The metrics are what count. As he left, Carla felt a surge of satisfaction. This was why she had sacrificed so much. This was why she pushed down the uncomfortable feelings, why she had learned to categorize patients into efficient triage protocols. Some needed extensive care. Others, the elderly with vague complaints, the frequent flyers, the ones who just needed someone to listen, they were draining limited resources from patients who truly needed help. She returned to the nurse's station and pulled up the patient board. Aisha was still with Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman with dementia who'd been agitated all evening. Carla could see Aisha holding the woman's hand, speaking softly, wasting precious time on comfort measures that wouldn't change the outcome.
The ambulance radio crackled to life. Metropolitan General, this is Rescue 7. We're en route with a 67-year-old female, abdominal pain, rate 8 out of 10. Vitals, BP 145/90, pulse 88, resp 20, ETA 4 minutes. Carla's fingers flew across the keyboard, creating the patient file. Her internal triage protocol activated automatically. Elderly female, abdominal pain, probably gastritis, constipation, or anxiety. The typical complaints that filled the ER every night with patients who didn't need emergency care. Another frequent flyer, she muttered, assigning the incoming patient to bed 7 in the back corner. Aisha looked up, concern crossing her face. Carla, abdominal pain in elderly patients can be serious. Remember Mr. Patterson last month? I remember that Mr. Patterson's heart attack turned out to be indigestion. Carla cut her off. I've got this, Aisha. Why don't you finish up with Mrs. Henderson? The unspoken message was clear. Stop wasting time and let the efficient nurses handle actual triage. Aisha's expression shifted to something that looked like disappointment, but she turned back to her patient without another word. Carla checked the clock. 11:03 p.m. 8 hours until shift change. 8 hours to maintain her perfect record to show the new chief, indirectly, through the metrics, that this ER had staff who understood the real priorities. The ambulance bay doors burst open. Carla grabbed a clipboard and headed toward the entrance, her mind already categorizing, already planning how to process this patient as quickly as possible. She had no idea that the frail elderly woman on the incoming gurney was about to change everything. No idea that the next 8 hours would cost her everything she'd worked for. No idea that sometimes the people who seem to matter least turn out to matter most of all. The automatic doors slid open and paramedic Tommy Jackson wheeled the gurney through with practiced precision. The woman on the stretcher looked small, almost lost among the white sheets and monitoring equipment. Her gray hair was disheveled, her clothes simple and worn, her face twisted in obvious pain. This is Mrs. Margaret Thompson, Tommy said, reading from his tablet as they moved toward the ER. His voice was professional, detailed, the voice of someone who'd learned to document everything. Ma'am, can you tell the nurse about your pain? The elderly woman, Dr. Margaret Chen, though no one in the ER knew it, looked up at Carla with keen, observant eyes that belied her fragile appearance. Despite the pain clouding her features, those eyes missed nothing. It started suddenly, Mrs. Chen said, her voice strained but clear. Sharp pain, right here. It's gotten worse over the past few hours, and I feel... Bed 7, Carla interrupted, directing them toward the back corner of the ER, past the trauma bays, past the cardiac monitoring stations, to the area typically reserved for low-priority cases. We'll get you settled and I'll be back to do a full assessment. Tommy's jaw tightened. Nurse, her pain level is significant. Given the location and the acute onset, I appreciate the handoff, Carla said, her tone professional but dismissive. I'll take it from here. She helped transfer Mrs. Chen to the hospital bed, her movements efficient but perfunctory. No eye contact, no reassuring touch, just the mechanical process of getting a patient from point A to point B. "I'll get someone to help you into a gown," Carla said, already typing notes. "What medications do you take regularly?" "Just over-the-counter pain relievers for my joints," Mrs. Chen replied, watching Carla's face carefully. "Young lady, this pain is quite severe. I'm concerned that—" "On a scale of 1 to 10? Carla asked, not looking up. 8. "Perhaps 9. Now." Carla's fingers paused over the tablet, then resumed typing. In her experience, elderly patients always rated their pain higher than it actually was. She made a mental note, reported 8 out of 10, likely actual 5 out of 10. "Any allergies?" Carla continued. "No, but I really think—" A commotion at the ER entrance cut through their conversation. A young woman's voice, loud and insistent. "Someone needs to help me right now! I can't walk! This is an emergency!" Carla's head snapped toward the sound. Through the curtain, she could see a 22-year-old woman being helped through the door by 2 friends, all dressed in party clothes, the distinct smell of alcohol wafting through the ER. "I'll be back," Carla told Mrs. Chen, already moving toward the curtain. "Wait," Mrs. Chen called out, a note of genuine distress in her voice. "I really need—" But Carla was gone.
In the next bed over, James Morrison had been listening to the entire exchange. At 73, the retired English teacher had spent his career teaching students to read between the lines, to notice what wasn't being said as much as what was. He'd been in this ER 3 times in 2 weeks with chest pain, each time told it was anxiety, each time sent home with little more than a pat on the head and suggestions to relax. He knew dismissal when he heard it. "Ma'am," he called softly to Mrs. Chen, "are you all right over there?" Mrs. Chen turned her head toward his voice, managing a small smile despite the pain. "I've been better, thank you for asking." "That nurse," James said carefully. "She didn't seem too concerned." "No," Mrs. Chen replied, her voice thoughtful, despite the discomfort. "She didn't." In the front of the ER, Carla had reached the young woman, Lily Rodriguez, though Carla didn't know she was a hospital board member's daughter. She only saw what she wanted to see, young, vocal, visible. "What happened?" Carla asked, her tone instantly warmer than it had been with Mrs. Chen. "I was dancing. Oh my God, it hurt so bad, and I think I twisted my ankle," Lily said, dramatically clutching her friends. "I heard a pop and everything. I probably need x-rays and maybe a cast. This is literally the worst night ever. I was supposed to post my outfit on Instagram." Carla quickly assessed the ankle. Mild swelling, no obvious deformity, good circulation. A straightforward sprain at most, but Lily was young, articulate, and insistent. "Let's get you into a room right away. We'll take good care of you," Carla said. "We'll take good care of you." From her position near the nurse's station, Aisha Williams watched this unfold with growing concern. She'd seen Mrs. Thompson wheeled in, had noticed Tommy Jackson's unusually detailed handoff, had caught the location and description of the abdominal pain that should have raised red flags for anyone paying attention. She started toward bed 7, but Carla intercepted her. "I've got 7. Can you handle the intake on the MVA in bed 3? "Carla, that elderly woman's symptoms sound concerning. Maybe we should—" "I did the intake, likely gastritis or constipation. I'll order some pain meds when I get a chance. Right now, we have a potential fracture that needs x-ray." Aisha's eyes moved past Carla to where Lily was now taking selfies with her friends, laughing despite her emergency. Then to bed 7, where Mrs. Chen lay in obvious distress. "Carla," Aisha said quietly, "that girl has a sprained ankle. That woman might have something serious." "That woman," Carla replied, her voice cold, "has vague abdominal pain. That girl has a visible injury requiring immediate imaging. This is called triage, Aisha. Maybe if you understood it better, your metrics wouldn't be in the bottom quarter." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cruel. Aisha's face showed hurt, then something harder, disappointment that cut deeper than anger. "You're right, Aisha," she said softly. "I don't understand triage the way you do. I still think it means treating people like people, not metrics on a dashboard." She turned away, leaving Carla alone with her perfect efficiency record and her hollow justifications. In bed 7, Mrs. Chen shifted, trying to find a position that eased the pain. It was getting worse, spreading across her abdomen, accompanied now by waves of nausea. The monitoring equipment beeped steadily, but no one was watching. She thought of her late husband Richard and the chest pain he reported to an ER nurse 3 years ago. The dismissal, the assumptions that an elderly man with chest pain was probably just anxious, probably seeking attention, probably wasting everyone's time. He died 2 hours after they sent him home, a massive heart attack, treatable if anyone had listened. That's why she'd taken this position. That's why she'd spent her first night undercover as a patient, using Richard's surname instead of her own, dressed down, appearing as vulnerable as possible. She needed to see what really happened when no one was watching, when there were no inspections, no advance warnings, no opportunities for staff to perform for administration. Now she was seeing it, and what she saw confirmed her worst fears. "Excuse me," Mrs. Chen called out, her voice strained. "Nurse, I really need help." But Carla was in the X-ray room with Lily, helping her to pose for photos with her wrapped ankle, laughing at her patient's Instagram captions. Behind them, Dr. Brandon Hale walked through the ER, his eyes scanning the patient board. He paused at the nurse's station, noting Carla's quick intake times with approval. "Excellent work tonight, Carla. This is exactly the kind of efficiency the new chief needs to see." Carla glowed with pride, completely unaware that the new chief was watching from bed 7, taking mental notes about everything she'd witnessed. And in the pocket of Mrs. Chen's worn coat, a hospital ID badge lay hidden, the one that read, "Dr. Margaret Chen, Chief of Hospital Operations." The countdown had begun. In less than 7 hours, everyone would know who she was. In less than 7 hours, Carla's perfect record would mean nothing at all. Time moved differently in the ER. Minutes stretched into hours, yet hours vanished in moments. By 1 a.m., Carla had processed 6 patients through intake, each one adding to her impressive turnover rate. But in bed 7, Mrs. Chen had received nothing beyond a cursory examination and empty promises. The pain had intensified. What started as a sharp, localized ache had spread across her abdomen, each wave stronger than the last. The low-grade fever from intake had climbed to 101.2 degrees. Her skin had taken on a clammy pallor, and her breathing had become shallow and labored. But the curtain around bed 7 remained closed, and no one came. James Morrison had been watching the clock. He'd pressed his call button twice, softly at first, then with more insistence. The light at the nurse's station blinked red. Bed 8 requesting assistance, but the staff flowed around it like water around a stone. Finally, a nursing assistant poked her head through his curtain. "Can I help you, Mr. Morrison?" "It's not for me," James said, gesturing toward bed 7. "The woman next to me. She's in a lot of pain. I think she needs help." The assistant glanced toward Mrs. Chen's curtain. "I'll let her nurse know." But she didn't. Carla was with another patient, and the assistant had 15 other tasks demanding her attention. In the chaos of the graveyard shift, one elderly patient's pain got lost in the shuffle. "Ma'am," James called through the curtain, "are you holding up over there?" A weak voice answered, "I'm managing. Thank you for trying." "What's your name?" James asked. "Margaret," Mrs. Chen replied, another wave of pain making her grip the bed rail. "Margaret Thompson." James didn't know that the surname was her late husband's, that Thompson was the name of the man whose death had brought her to this hospital, to this undercover assessment, to this moment of experiencing firsthand the dismissal that killed him. "I'm James," James said. "I'm sorry they're not taking better care of you. I know what it's like. This is my 3rd visit in 2 weeks. They keep telling me it's anxiety." In bed 7, Dr. Chen filed away another data point. Repeat patient with recurring symptoms, consistently dismissed. The pattern was forming, clear and damning. At the nurse's station, Carla's phone buzzed insistently. Sunset Gardens Nursing Home, third call of the shift. This time, the preview message was longer. Urgent. Ruby Washington, experiencing cardiac symptoms. Please call immediately. Carla stared at the screen. Her grandmother. Cardiac symptoms. The words should have struck terror into her heart, should have made her drop everything and call. But she was in the middle of documenting Lily Rodriguez's discharge. Another quick turnover, another metric achieved. And there was a trauma coming in, and Dr. Hale was watching, and the new chief starts tomorrow, and her perfect record hung in the balance. "I'll call on my break," Carla muttered, silencing the phone. "Did you say something?" Aisha Williams asked, looking up from a chart. "Nothing," Carla said. Too quickly. But Aisha had seen the nursing home's name on the caller ID. She'd met Ruby once, years ago, at a hospital event. A beautiful soul, a former nurse herself, the grandmother who had raised Carla after her parents died. And Carla had just sent the call about Ruby's cardiac emergency to voicemail. Aisha's expression shifted to something beyond disappointment. Horror, perhaps, or grief, for who Carla had become. "Carla," Aisha said quietly, "that was your grandmother's nursing home." "I know," Carla snapped, "and I'm working. I'll call back when I have time. Patients come first." The irony of those words, patients come first, while Mrs. Chen languished untreated in bed 7, was completely lost on her. But it wasn't lost on Aisha, or on Tommy Jackson, who had just returned with another patient and immediately noticed Mrs. Thompson still waiting in the same bed he'd left her in over an hour ago. "Hey," Tommy approached Carla, his voice carefully controlled. "The elderly woman I brought in earlier, has she been assessed yet? Her symptoms were pretty concerning." "I did the assessment," Carla said, not looking up from her computer. "Basic gastritis presentation. I'll order pain medication when I get a chance." "When you get a chance?" Tommy's voice rose slightly. "I brought her in over an hour ago with 8 out of 10 pain, right lower quadrant, acute onset, fever. Those are red flags." "Are you a doctor now?" Carla asked, her tone cutting. "I appreciate the handoff, but I think I know how to triage my own patients." Tommy stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his tablet and began typing, his fingers moving rapidly. Timestamps, delays, the nurse's dismissive responses. He'd learned in the Army that documentation was protection, that sometimes the only way to change a broken system was to carefully, methodically record its failures. "You're noting this in your report?" Carla asked, irritation creeping into her voice. "I note everything," Tommy replied evenly. "That's my job." At 2:15 a.m., Dr. Brandon Hale made rounds through the ER. He'd been in his office reviewing department metrics, preparing for tomorrow's meeting with the new chief of operations. When he stepped out, James Morrison flagged him down.
"Doctor, I'm sorry to bother you, but the woman in bed 7, she's been here for hours, and she's in a lot of pain." Hale pulled up the chart on a nearby computer. "Let me take a look." He approached bed 7, his manner professional but hurried. Mrs. Chen looked up at him with those keen, observant eyes. "Mrs. Thompson," Hale said, barely glancing at her as he scrolled through Carla's notes on his tablet. "I see Nurse Jensen evaluated you. Abdominal pain, right lower quadrant?" "Yes," Mrs. Chen replied. "It's gotten significantly worse, and I'm feeling nauseous and—" "Let me just do a quick exam," Hale interrupted. His hands palpated her abdomen for perhaps 15 seconds, perfunctory, rushed, barely enough to assess anything meaningful. Dr. Chen, with 3 decades of emergency medicine experience, recognized it for what it was: a performance of examination without actual examination, the kind of cursory assessment that missed critical diagnoses, that sent sick patients home, that created exactly the kind of outcomes she'd been hired to prevent. "Probably gastritis," Hale said, already moving away. "I'll order some pain medication, Zofran for the nausea. We'll monitor you for a bit and reassess." but his tone made it clear that reassess meant discharge as soon as possible to free up the bed. He found Carla at the nurse's station. Good call on bed 7. Typical presentation. Get her some meds and we'll move her through. Carla felt a surge of vindication. See, Dr. Hale agreed with her assessment. She wasn't being callous, she was being efficient, properly prioritizing resources. I'll handle it right away. But right away became 30 minutes, then 45, then an hour. There was a trauma from a car accident, a child with a fever, a man with chest pain that couldn't be ignored. Legitimate priorities, perhaps, but also convenient excuses. At 3 a.m., nearly 4 hours after Mrs. Chen arrived, Carla finally prepared the pain medication. She approached bed 7 with visible reluctance, as if the act of treating this patient was somehow beneath her. "Here's something for the pain," Carla said, hanging the IV bag without making eye contact. "Thank you," Mrs. Chen replied. Then, quietly, "You know, I've been a patient in many hospitals over the years. The way a nurse treats someone in pain says a lot about who they are." Carla's hands stilled on the IV line. Something in Mrs. Chen's tone made her look at the woman, really look at her for the first time all night. Those eyes, sharp, intelligent, observant. Not the eyes of a weak, confused elderly patient. The eyes of someone who saw everything, who understood more than she was letting on. For just a moment, Carla felt a flicker of unease. Then her phone buzzed, texting about wedding venues, and the moment passed. "I'll check on you in a bit," Carla said, already turning away. Behind her, Mrs. Chen watched her go. The pain medication would help, but she didn't need it for assessment purposes anymore. She'd seen everything she needed to see. The neglect wasn't just individual, it was institutional. From the nurse who dismissed elderly patients as resource drains, to the doctor who performed cursory examinations to maintain efficiency metrics, to the system that rewarded speed over care. But she also saw the contrast. Aisha Williams spending patient time with a confused elderly man, treating him with dignity despite the pressure to move faster. Tommy Jackson advocating for proper patient care even when dismissed. James Morrison pressing his call button repeatedly for a stranger's well-being. The hospital had good people. They just needed leadership that supported them instead of punishing them for being compassionate. In 6 hours, that leadership would arrive. In 6 hours, everything would change. But for now, in bed 7, Dr. Margaret Chen closed her eyes and breathed through the pain, both physical and moral, knowing that soon, very soon, accounts would come due. At 2:30 a.m., exactly 2 hours after intake, Carla finally returned to bed 7 with her tablet and stethoscope. The pain medication had taken a slight edge off Mrs. Chen's discomfort, but the underlying symptoms remained and were worsening. "I need to do a proper assessment now," Carla said, her tone suggesting this was an inconvenience rather than a necessity. Mrs. Chen nodded, watching Carla's face carefully. Of course. Carla's examination was perfunctory at best. Her hands barely touched Mrs. Chen's abdomen, pressing lightly in a few spots without the systematic thoroughness required to identify acute conditions. Her stethoscope touched Mrs. Chen's chest for perhaps 3 seconds. Her eyes remained on her tablet, checking boxes rather than actually observing her patient. "Describe your pain again," she typed with one hand. "Sharp, localized here." Mrs. Chen indicated her right lower quadrant. "It radiates slightly toward my hip. The pain is constant now, with waves of intensity. I've also developed nausea and chills." Classic appendicitis presentation. Any first-year medical student would recognize it. Carla typed, "Patient reports diffuse abdominal discomfort, likely gastric in origin." "That's not quite what I said," Mrs. Chen observed quietly. Carla looked up, irritation flashing across her face. "I'm documenting your symptoms." "You're documenting your interpretation of my symptoms," Mrs. Chen corrected gently. "There's a difference." The distinction made her defensive. "I've been a nurse for 4 years. I think I know how to take a patient history." "I'm sure you do," Mrs. Chen said. Then, after a pause, "Tell me something. What made you want to become a nurse?" The question caught Carla off guard. "What?" "It's a simple question. What drew you to nursing?"
Carla's jaw tightened. This was exactly the kind of time-wasting conversation she avoided. "I wanted to help people. Now, about your symptoms. And do you feel you're helping people?" Mrs. Chen's eyes remained steady, kind, but penetrating. "When you rush through examinations? When you dismiss pain you haven't taken time to properly assess?" "I don't have to justify my nursing practice to a patient," Carla said coldly. "No," Mrs. Chen agreed. "You have to justify it to yourself. Can you?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. Carla felt something uncomfortable twist in her chest. The same feeling she'd had earlier when Marcus told her not to let old people slow her down. The same feeling she'd suppressed when she ignored the call about Ruby. "I'll order more pain medication," Carla said, turning away. "Someone will check on you within the hour." "Wait," Mrs. Chen called out. Her voice was strained but clear. "I hope when you're in pain someday, nurse, someone treats you better than this." Carla stopped at the curtain but didn't turn around. "That sounds like emotional manipulation." "No," Mrs. Chen replied quietly. "It sounds like hope. For your sake, I hope someone shows you more compassion than you've shown me tonight." Carla pushed through the curtain and nearly collided with James Morrison, who was standing near his bed, clearly having overheard everything. "She's right, you know," James said. "I've been watching you all night. You're efficient, I'll give you that. But you've forgotten something important." "And what's that?" Carla asked, her voice sharp. "That we're people, not problems to be solved. That sometimes the person who seems least important is the one who needs help most." Carla walked away without responding, but James's words followed her like ghosts. Behind the curtain, Mrs. Chen lay back against the pillows, breathing carefully through the pain. She'd offered Carla a lifeline, a chance to pause and reflect. The young nurse had refused to take it. After Carla left, James pulled back Mrs. Chen's curtain slightly. "Are you all right, Margaret?" "I will be." Then, quietly, "I should tell you something, James. I'm not just a patient. I'm a physician. And I used to work in emergency medicine." James's eyes widened. "You're testing them?" "Observing," Mrs. Chen corrected. "My husband died 3 years ago because an ER nurse dismissed his chest pain as anxiety. I took this position to understand if his experience was isolated or systemic." "And what have you learned?" James asked. Mrs. Chen looked toward the nurse's station, where Carla was updating her metrics with visible satisfaction. "That the system is broken, but also that there are still good people trying to fix it. Now I just need to figure out which can be saved and which need to be removed." The countdown continued. 4.5 hours until the meeting. 4.5 hours until Carla's perfect record would be examined under a very different kind of light. The hours between 3 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. revealed everything about who Carla Jensen had become and who she could have been. In bed 12, Aisha Williams sat with an elderly man named Mr. Patterson, who had advanced dementia and was terrified by the unfamiliar hospital environment. He kept trying to climb out of bed, convinced he needed to get home to feed his cat. The cat had died 5 years ago, but in Mr. Patterson's fractured memory, his pet was waiting, hungry and alone. "It's okay, Mr. Patterson," Aisha said gently, holding his hand. "Your daughter Mary called. She's taking care of the cat. He's been fed. He's safe." Mr. Patterson's agitation slowly eased. Aisha stayed with him, speaking softly, not about his medical condition, but about his cat, about his garden, about the things that made him feel human and seen. She called his daughter with updates. She adjusted his blankets. She treated him like he mattered. The entire interaction took 45 minutes. 45 minutes that didn't show up on efficiency metrics, that didn't improve throughput numbers, that would likely get her criticized in the next staff review. But Mr. Patterson fell asleep peaceful instead of restrained.
And that, to Aisha, was what nursing meant. Across the ER, Carla's approach couldn't have been any different. She processed a college student with alcohol poisoning, judgmental comments about kids these days, but technically competent care. A minor car accident victim received brusque efficiency without warmth. When a homeless man arrived with an infected foot wound, Carla's disgust was barely concealed, though her treatment was professionally adequate. She wasn't incompetent, she was selectively compassionate, reserving her humanity for patients she deemed worthy of it. In bed 7, Mrs. Chen's fever climbed to 101.8. The pain had spread across her entire abdomen now, rigid and severe. She pressed the call button, but the nurse's station was overwhelmed, and her light blinked red among a dozen others, all crying for attention that wouldn't come. James Morrison watched it all, growing increasingly alarmed. Finally, he'd had enough. When a supervisor walked past, a nurse manager making rounds, James called out, "Excuse me, the woman in bed 7 needs help. She's been here for hours and she's getting worse." The supervisor checked the board, then approached Dr. Hale, who was completing paperwork at the nurse's station. "Doctor, bed 7 has been here 4 hours. Should we be doing more?" Hale pulled up the chart, scrolled through Carla's minimal notes, then walked to bed 7. His examination lasted perhaps 20 seconds. A quick glance, a perfunctory touch to the abdomen. No real assessment at all.
Gastritis, he pronounced. Basic pain management protocol. We'll observe for another hour and then she can go home. Mrs. Chen, who had diagnosed hundreds of acute abdomens in her 30-year career, recognized medical negligence when she experienced it. Hale's examination was theater, not medicine. He'd made his diagnosis before he touched her, confirming what his star nurse had already documented. She'd found the root of the problem. Carla wasn't an isolated bad nurse. She was the product of bad leadership, a doctor who valued metrics over care, who rewarded efficiency over compassion, who had created a culture where dismissing elderly patients was standard practice. At 5:30 a.m., nearly 4 hours after Mrs. Chen's arrival, Carla finally administered the pain medication Hale had ordered. She hung the IV bag with visible annoyance, as if treating this patient was somehow beneath her dignity. "Here's your medication," Carla said to another nurse within Mrs. Chen's hearing. 4 hours for basic pain management. Some patients require so much patience. But that's what we deal with in the ER. Difficult elderly patients who exaggerate every symptom. Tommy Jackson had just returned with another patient. He heard Carla's comment, and something in his expression hardened. He pulled out his tablet and added another note to his growing documentation. 5:30 a.m. Patient finally receives pain medication. Nurse makes disparaging comments about difficult elderly patients within patient's hearing. Pattern of age-based discrimination evident. Aisha, finishing up with Mr. Patterson, checked the medication administration record on the computer. Her eyes widened when she saw the timestamp, 4 hours after intake for basic pain relief. She looked at bed 7, then at Carla, and something like heartbreak crossed her face. This wasn't just poor nursing. This was cruelty, disguised as efficiency. The night shift wound toward its end. Carla completed her documentation with satisfaction, her metrics still perfect. Fastest turnover, most patients processed, 0 complaints that mattered. At 6:45 a.m., the overhead intercom crackled to life. "Attention all staff. Mandatory meeting at 7 a.m. in Conference Room A to meet Dr. Margaret Chen, our new Chief of Hospital Operations. Attendance is required." Carla glanced at the clock and groaned. She'd need to rush through her final charts and change out of her scrubs. First impressions mattered, and she wanted the new chief to see her as the professional, efficient nurse her metrics prove she was. She had no idea that the new chief had already seen everything she needed to see. No idea that her perfect record was about to become evidence of her complete failure. No idea that the frail, elderly woman in bed 7, The one she'd dismissed, neglected, and mocked was about to stand before the entire staff and change everything. Carla hurried to the locker room, her mind on making a good impression. Behind her, in bed 7, Dr. Margaret Chen slowly sat up, accepted help from a compassionate nurse's aide, and prepared to reveal exactly who she was.
The reckoning was 90 minutes away, and nothing would ever be the same. Conference room A filled quickly at 6:55 a.m. The exhausted night shift mingled with the arriving day shift, creating a buzz of tired conversation. Most had heard rumors about the new chief of operations, a reformer brought in to address patient care complaints, someone with a reputation for holding people accountable. Carla positioned herself in the third row, close enough to be noticed, but not so close as to seem presumptuous. She changed into fresh clothes, fixed her hair, and checked her appearance 3 times. First impressions mattered. The new chief needed her to see her as a rising star, someone worthy of the promotion Dr. Hale had hinted at. Dr. Brandon Hale sat beside her, projecting his usual confident charm. He leaned over and whispered, "Your numbers tonight were excellent, exactly what this department needs to show." Carla felt a surge of pride. Whatever happened in this meeting, her metrics spoke for themselves. In the back row, Aisha Williams slumped in her chair, exhausted from the long shift. She'd stayed with Mr. Patterson until his daughter arrived, then completed her charting with the thorough detail that made her slow by department standards. Her eyes kept drifting to the empty seat beside her, the space where someone with integrity should sit. At exactly 7 a.m., Elena Vasquez stepped to the podium. The VP of Operations was a formidable woman in her mid-50s, known for her no-nonsense approach and loyalty to results. The room quieted immediately. "Good morning, everyone. I know you're tired, so I'll be brief." Elena's eyes swept the room with sharp intelligence. "As you know, we've been experiencing challenges with patient satisfaction scores, particularly regarding our treatment of elderly and vulnerable populations. The board has brought in someone specifically to address these concerns." Carla felt a small twinge of unease, but pushed it aside. Her patient satisfaction scores were fine. No one complained when they were efficiently processed and sent home. Dr. Margaret Chen comes to us with an exceptional reputation. She spent 30 years as an emergency physician before moving into administration. She's known for her innovative approach to patient care assessment and her commitment to cultural reform. Please welcome our new Chief of Hospital Operations. The conference room doors opened. Carla's world stopped spinning. Walking to the podium, dressed in professional attire, but unmistakably, horrifyingly familiar, was the elderly woman from bed 7, Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Margaret Thompson, who wasn't Thompson at all. Dr. Margaret Chen. The recognition hit Carla like a physical blow. Her face drained of all color. Her hands began trembling uncontrollably. Her breath caught in her throat, shallow and panicked. Around her, she heard gasps and murmurs as other staff members who'd seen Mrs. Thompson in the ER made the same devastating connection. No, this couldn't be happening. Dr. Chen walked to the podium with calm authority. And though Carla could see she was still in some discomfort, the kidney stone pain was real. Her composure was absolute. This was a woman in complete control, and Carla suddenly realized she'd never had any control at all. "Thank you, Elena," Dr. Chen said, her voice clear and strong. The same voice that had asked Carla what made her want to become a nurse. The same voice that had hoped someone would treat her with more compassion. Dr. Chen's eyes swept the room and landed on Carla. For one eternal moment, their gazes locked. Recognition passed between them, mutual, public, and damning. "I believe in understanding organizations from the ground up.
Statistics and reports only tell part of the story. To truly understand a hospital's culture, you need to experience it as a patient experiences it. So last night, I spent my first evening with you conducting an undercover assessment of our emergency department. The room erupted in whispers. Carla felt every eye turning toward her. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Her mouth went dry. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel focused solely on the woman at the podium. The woman she dismissed, neglected, mocked. I arrived by ambulance at 11 p.m. with severe abdominal pain, fever, and nausea. Classic symptoms that should have prompted immediate assessment and diagnostic imaging. She paused, letting the medical facts settle over the room. Around Carla, nurses and doctors shifted uncomfortably. Those who'd walked past bed 7, those who'd heard the call button and ignored it, those who'd participated, through action or inaction, in the neglect. Instead, Dr. Chen continued, her tone professional and measured, I was placed in a back corner bed and received a cursory intake examination lasting approximately 3 minutes. The nurse conducting this intake made minimal eye contact, asked dismissive questions, and openly expressed skepticism about my reported pain level. Carla felt heads turning toward her. She stared at her hands, watching them tremble, unable to make them stop. I waited 4 hours for basic pain medication. During that time, I observed another patient, a young woman with a sprained ankle from a party, receive immediate attention, imaging, treatment, and discharge within 90 minutes. The contrast in care was striking and disturbing. On the screen behind Dr. Chen, Elena Vasquez projected a document. Tommy Jackson's paramedic report, time-stamped and detailed. 2303, patient presenting with severe abdominal pain, RLQ, rated 8 out of 10, vitals elevated, recommended immediate assessment. 2315, handoff to RN Jensen, expressed concern about symptoms. RN appeared dismissive of paramedic assessment. More documents appeared. Medication administration record showing the 4-hour delay. Nursing notes so minimal they bordered on neglect. 3 sentences for a patient in severe pain. But I also want to acknowledge what went right, Dr. Chen said, her tone shifting slightly, because understanding the failures means nothing if we don't also recognize the successes. The screen changed to show different documentation. Aisha Williams's detailed notes on Mr. Patterson, the compassionate care plan, the family contact log.
Nurse Williams, Dr. Chen said, looking directly at Aisha in the back row. Your treatment of an elderly patient with dementia last night was exemplary. You spent time calming his anxiety, coordinating with his family, treating him with dignity despite the pressure to move faster. You demonstrated what nursing should be. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. Years of being criticized for being too slow or wasting time on patients who just needed someone to listen, and suddenly, here was validation from the highest authority in the hospital. You tried to check on me as well, Dr. Chen continued. You were concerned about my symptoms, but you were turned away by the nurse who'd claimed responsibility for my care. Now the room's attention swung fully to Carla. No more ambiguity, no more indirect references. Nurse Carla Jensen, Dr. Chen said, her voice professional but weighted with consequence. Please stand. The words hit like a gavel. Carla's legs barely supported her as she stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Her face burned with shame. Her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. The confident, efficient nurse who'd walked into this meeting 20 minutes ago had been completely dismantled. Dr. Hale subtly shifted his chair away from her. The movement was small, but everyone noticed. The mentor who'd praised her efficiency now distanced himself from the consequences of the culture he'd created. Nurse Jensen, I'm giving you an opportunity to speak. Can you explain your clinical reasoning for the care decisions you made last night? It was a professional question, a fair question, but there was no good answer, and everyone in the room knew it. Carla opened her mouth. Excuses flooded her mind. The ER was busy. She'd prioritized based on triage protocols. Her metrics showed efficiency. Other patients needed urgent care. All the rationalizations she'd been telling herself for months and years. But as she looked at Dr. Chen's steady gaze, at Aisha's disappointed face, at the documented evidence projected on the screen, something inside her cracked. The wall she'd built between who she was and who she'd become finally shattered. "I have no defense," Carla heard herself say, her voice breaking. "I saw an elderly woman in pain, and I decided she wasn't important enough for my time." The confession shocked the room, shocked Carla herself. But once the words started, they wouldn't stop. "I prioritized efficiency metrics over patient care. I made assumptions based on her age. I dismissed concerns from the paramedic, from a fellow patient, from my colleague." Tears streamed down her face now, not performance, but genuine recognition. "And during my shift, my grandmother's nursing home called about a cardiac event. I sent it to voicemail because I was too focused on maintaining my perfect record." The parallel hung in the air, devastating and clear. While Carla was neglecting one elderly woman in pain, she was also abandoning her own grandmother. "I became exactly what I never wanted to be. And I don't know when it happened. I don't know when I stopped seeing patients as people." The room sat in stunned silence. They'd expected deflection, justification, excuses, not this raw, honest confession. Dr. Chen's expression remained professional, but something softened in her eyes. "Thank you for your honesty, Nurse Jensen. That took courage." She let the moment settle, then continued. "Effective immediately, you are suspended pending a formal review. However, I'm going to offer you an unusual choice." Carla looked up, confused and terrified. "Option 1. You resign with a neutral reference. You avoid formal disciplinary action on your record. You walk away." Carla's breath caught. A way out. A chance to escape this nightmare. Option 2. You accept a 6-month probationary reassignment. You work as a patient care assistant in our geriatric ward under Nurse Williams's supervision. You attend mandatory ethics training twice weekly. You keep a reflective journal reviewed monthly. Your license remains suspended during this period. If you complete the program successfully with demonstrated genuine change, you return to nursing. If not, your license is revoked permanently. The room erupted in whispers. This wasn't standard protocol. This was mercy combined with accountability, a chance at redemption that required real work, real change, real transformation. Dr. Hale looked uncomfortable, realizing that if Carla's behavior was being examined this closely, his leadership would be next. "You need to decide now, not with calculation, but with honesty. Who do you want to be?" Carla stood trembling, facing the hardest choice of her life. The seconds stretched into eternity. Every person in the conference room waited, watching Carla Jensen face the defining moment of her life. Option 1 was the easy path. Resign with dignity, intact, at least officially. Start over somewhere else. Pretend this night never happened. Run from the consequences and hope distance would dull the shame. Option 2 was brutal honesty. 6 months of humbling work, doing tasks she'd once considered beneath her nursing skills, daily confrontation with the patients she'd dismissed, supervision by the colleagues she'd mocked, no guarantee of success, only the possibility of becoming someone different, someone better. Carla's mind raced through calculations, her career, her wedding to Marcus, her perfect record that was now shattered beyond repair. The easiest thing would be to walk away, to protect what little remained of her professional image. But then she thought of Ruby, her grandmother lying in a nursing home bed having a cardiac event, asking for Carla, and Carla too busy maintaining efficiency metrics to even call back. She thought of Dr. Chen's eyes, the pain Carla had dismissed as exaggeration, the dignity Carla had stripped away through neglect, the humanity Carla had failed to see.
She thought of Aisha, holding Mr. Patterson's hand for 45 minutes, being called inefficient for treating patients like people, and still showing up every shift with compassion intact. Option 2, Carla whispered, then louder, her voice breaking but clear. I'll do option 2. Gasps rippled through the room. Even Dr. Chen looked slightly surprised, though she quickly masked it with professional composure. Are you certain? Dr. Chen asked. This won't be easy. You'll be starting over, learning to be a caregiver before you can be a nurse again. You'll face patients who have every reason not to trust you. You'll work under supervision, your every action evaluated. 6 months with no guarantee of success. I'm certain, Carla said, and for the first time in years, she felt something like clarity. I need to do this, not to save my career, to save myself. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. Then report to HR after this meeting to formalize the terms. Your probation begins tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., geriatric ward. Nurse Williams will be your supervisor. Carla looked back at Aisha, who met her gaze with an expression that was complex, not quite forgiveness, but not condemnation either. Something like cautious hope. I won't make this easy, Aisha said quietly, but I will make it possible, if you're willing to learn. I am, Carla replied. Thank you. Dr. Chen dismissed Carla with a gesture, and she walked from the conference room on shaking legs, feeling every eye follow her exit. The door closed behind her, cutting off the whispers and murmurs. But Dr. Chen wasn't finished. Before we adjourn, she said, her tone shifting to something harder, we need to address the systemic issues that created this situation, because Nurse Jensen isn't an isolated problem. She's a symptom of a larger cultural failure. Her gaze fixed on Dr. Brandon Hale, who suddenly looked much less confident. Dr. Hale, your department has the fastest patient turnover in the hospital. Your metrics are exceptional. She paused, letting the word metrics hang with irony. But you also have the highest complaint rate, the most frequent flyer returns, and the worst patient satisfaction scores. Would you like to explain this pattern? Hale straightened, attempting to project authority. We run an efficient department. In an overcrowded ER, we have to prioritize. You prioritized my sprained ankle over my potential appendicitis. You conducted a 20-second examination and diagnosed gastritis without any diagnostic imaging. You praised Nurse Jensen for efficient handling of a patient you never properly assessed. Elena Vasquez projected more data, complaint patterns, readmission rates, documentation from staff about pressure to move patients through, regardless of whether their conditions were properly treated. Your leadership has created a culture where compassion is punished and callousness is rewarded, where nurses like Aisha Williams are criticized for providing good care because it takes time, where efficiency metrics matter more than human lives. Hale's face reddened. You don't understand the pressures we face, the volume, the limited resources. I was an ER physician for 30 years. I understand pressure. I also understand the difference between necessary efficiency and systematic neglect. You've confused the two, and in doing so, you failed your staff and your patients. The room was dead silent. Effective immediately, you're reassigned to a non-supervisory position pending a comprehensive leadership review. Your management philosophy is exactly what this hospital hired me to dismantle.
Hale stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "You can't do this based on one night." "I can do this based on 3 months of documented complaints. Staff surveys expressing fear of retaliation for providing thorough care, and patient outcome data showing your department treats symptoms but not people. The undercover assessment was simply confirmation." Hale looked around the room for support, but found only averted eyes. Even those who'd benefited from his favor recognized that defending him now would be career suicide. He walked out without another word, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Dr. Chen waited until the door closed, then addressed the remaining staff. "Let me be clear about what happens next. This hospital will reform its culture from the top down. Compassionate care will be valued, not penalized. Efficiency matters, but never at the cost of human dignity. If you can't embrace that philosophy, you should start looking for employment elsewhere." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "But if you can, if you want to be part of a hospital that honors both excellence and empathy, then we're going to build something remarkable together." The meeting adjourned in a buzz of shocked conversation. Aisha remained seated, processing everything that had happened. Tommy Jackson caught her eye from across the room and nodded with respect. Finally, someone in leadership who understood. Outside in the hallway, Carla sat alone in the chapel, her phone in her trembling hands. She took a deep breath and finally called Sunset Gardens Nursing Home. "This is Carla Jensen. I'm calling about Ruby Washington. Is my grandmother okay?" The charge nurse's voice was kind, but carried a weight of gentle reproach. "She's stable now. The cardiac event was mild, thank God, but she kept asking for you. She was so worried you were too busy to care."
The words cut deeper than any professional consequence. Too busy to care. That's exactly what she'd become. "I'm coming to visit tonight," Carla said. "Can you tell her I'm coming and that I'm sorry? So sorry?" "I'll tell her, honey. She loves you very much." Carla ended the call and buried her face in her hands, finally allowing herself to fully feel the weight of what she'd become and what she needed to rebuild from these broken pieces. The hospital chapel was small and quiet, lit by soft filtered light through stained glass windows. Carla sat in the front pew, her phone clutched in her hands, tears streaming steadily down her face. A memory surfaced, vivid and painful. She was 12 years old, standing in this exact chapel after her parents' funeral. Ruby had brought her here, held her while she cried, and said something Carla had forgotten until this moment. "Nursing is about seeing people, baby. Really seeing them, not just their bodies, but their hearts. Never forget that." But she had forgotten. Somewhere between student loans and efficiency metrics, between Marcus's ambitions and Dr. Hale's praise, between exhaustion and burnout, she'd forgotten the most important thing her grandmother had taught her. "Carla?" She looked up. Aisha Williams stood in the doorway, still in her scrubs from the night shift, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "I'm not here to lecture you," Aisha said, sitting down a respectful distance away. "I'm here because in 6 hours you're going to start the hardest job of your life, and you need to understand what you're choosing." "I know it won't be easy," Carla said. "It's not about easy or hard," Aisha replied. "It's about why you're doing it. If you're doing this to save your nursing license, you'll fail. If you're doing it to look good to administration, you'll fail. If you're doing it because Dr. Chen gave you no choice, you'll fail." "Then why should I do it?" Carla asked. "To save yourself," Aisha said simply. "Not your career, yourself. The person you were before you let this job turn you into someone you don't recognize. That's the only reason that matters." Carla looked at her hands. "I called the nursing home. Ruby's stable.
She had a cardiac event and I wasn't there because I was too busy maintaining my perfect efficiency record. I know, Aisha said gently. I heard your confession in the meeting. How do I fix this? Carla's voice broke. How do I become someone who doesn't ignore their own grandmother, who doesn't dismiss patients in pain, who actually cares again? One patient at a time, one moment of presence at a time, one choice to see someone as human instead of a metric. It's not complicated, Carla. It's just hard. Really, really hard. She pulled out her phone and sent Carla a text. That's the address of Ruby's nursing home. Meet me there tonight at 6 p.m. If you're serious about changing, it starts with the people you've neglected. Carla looked at the message, her chest tight with anxiety. What if she doesn't want to see me? She's your grandmother. She'll always want to see you. But you need to face what you've become, and you need to let her see it too. No hiding, no excuses, just honesty. Aisha stood to leave, then paused. Tomorrow morning, geriatric ward. You'll be wearing patient care assistant scrubs, not a nurse's uniform. You'll do the work you used to consider beneath you. Bathing, feeding, sitting with lonely people who just want someone to listen. And you'll do it under my supervision, which means I'll see every shortcut, every moment of impatience, every time you start to slip back into old patterns. I understand, Carla said. Do you? Aisha challenged, because the patients you'll be caring for are exactly like the woman you neglected last night. Elderly, vulnerable, often dismissed. They have every reason not to trust you. You'll have to earn their trust, and some of them will never give it. Can you handle that? Carla met Aisha's eyes. I have to. What other choice is there? There's always the choice to quit, to walk away when it gets too hard. Most people do. The question is whether you will. After Aisha left, Carla remained in the chapel. She pulled out her phone and opened her messages. There was one from Marcus. Where are you? We need to talk about the venue deposit. She stared at the message, thinking about how to explain what had happened. How to tell him she wasn't the rising star nurse anymore, that she'd been suspended, that she'd chosen 6 months of humiliating probation over resignation. She thought about his advice that morning. Don't let old people slow you down. She thought about the expensive wedding at the riverside, the venue where everyone who matters would see them. And she realized with sudden, painful clarity that Marcus had been part of the problem. His values had reinforced her worst instincts. His materialism had justified her callousness. His focus on status had made her forget why she'd wanted to be a nurse in the first place. Instead of responding, she pocketed her phone. That conversation could wait. First, she needed to face Ruby. Meanwhile, back in the conference room, Dr. Chen had remained behind with Elena Vasquez and a small team of administrators. She was reviewing data, planning the systematic reforms that would transform the hospital's culture. The staff meeting went well, Elena said. You handled it perfectly, holding individuals accountable while addressing systemic issues. Carla Jensen isn't the enemy, Dr. Chen replied. She's a young nurse who was taught all the wrong lessons by a system that valued speed over care. If she can change, she'll be a powerful example. If she can't, at least she'll be prevented from harming patients. And Hale, Elena asked. He's a symptom of a larger problem in healthcare. Administrators who've forgotten that efficiency should serve patient care, not replace it. Dr. Chen paused, rubbing her side where the kidney stone still caused residual discomfort. I'm finally going to get this properly treated. I want you to note which staff members provide compassionate care during my treatment. Those are the people we build the new culture around. An hour later, Dr. Chen was in the hospital's outpatient clinic. A young nurse named Maria Chen, no relation, provided her care with exceptional gentleness and attention. You're Dr. Chen, aren't you? Maria asked as she prepared the IV. The new chief of operations? I am, Dr. Chen replied. You're doing excellent work, by the way. Maria smiled. I learned from the best. Nurse Aisha Williams trained me when I first started. She taught me that taking time with patients isn't inefficiency, it's the whole point of nursing. Dr. Chen filed that information away. Aisha wasn't just a compassionate nurse, she was creating the next generation of compassionate nurses. That made her invaluable. As Maria worked, Dr. Chen thought about her late husband, Richard, about the night he died because an ER nurse dismissed his symptoms, about the promise she'd made at his grave to prevent other families from experiencing that loss. Last night had been painful, both physically and emotionally, but it had also been necessary. She'd seen the hospital's true culture, identified the problems, and begun the process of transformation. One nurse suspended, one doctor reassigned, one culture beginning to change. It was a start. Not justice for Richard, exactly, but perhaps prevention for the next Richard, and the next, and the next. That, Dr. Chen thought as the pain medication eased her discomfort, was the best memorial she could offer him. Not revenge, but reform. Not punishment, but prevention. And somewhere in the hospital, a young nurse named Carla Jensen was about to begin the long, difficult journey back to the person she used to be. Whether she completed that journey remained to be seen, but at least now she had the chance. The HR meeting at 3 p.m. made everything official. Carla signed documents that transformed her from a registered nurse with a perfect efficiency record to a patient care assistant on probation. 6 months, twice-weekly ethics seminars, a reflective journal reviewed monthly. Her nursing license suspended, contingent on successful completion. The HR director, a kind woman named Patricia, slid the final document across the desk. This is unusual, Carla. Dr. Chen is giving you something most people don't get, a genuine second chance. Don't waste it. I won't, Carla promised, though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. At 6 p.m., Carla met Aisha outside Sunset Gardens nursing home. The building was modest, clean but worn, the kind of place where people went when they couldn't afford luxury senior living, the kind of place Carla had told herself she was too busy to visit more than once every few months. Ready? Aisha asked. No, Carla admitted, but I need to do this anyway. Ruby Washington was in room 214. She looked smaller than Carla remembered, fragile against the hospital bed, oxygen cannula in her nose, but her eyes, those sharp, loving eyes, were the same. Carla, baby, Ruby said, her voice weak but warm. You came. Carla crossed the room and took her grandmother's hand, tears already falling. I'm so sorry, Nana. I'm so sorry. They called and I didn't answer. I was too busy with work and I just... Hush now, Ruby said, squeezing her hand gently. Tell me what happened. Tell me the truth. So Carla did. She told her everything. The neglect, the dismissal, the metrics that mattered more than people, the moment Dr. Chen revealed herself, the choice she'd made. She held nothing back, letting Ruby see exactly who she had become. When she finished, Ruby was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, When did you stop seeing people, baby? I don't know, Carla whispered. It happened so slowly. I was tired and overwhelmed, and everyone kept telling me efficiency was what mattered. I forgot why I wanted to be a nurse in the first place. You wanted to be a nurse because your mama was a nurse, Ruby said softly. Because you saw her care for people with kindness, and you wanted to do the same. You wanted to honor her memory by helping others. Carla had forgotten that too. The grief of losing her parents had become buried under years of survival and ambition.
Can I fix this? She asked. Ruby looked at her granddaughter with profound love and profound disappointment mixed together. I don't know, honey. Can you? Aisha, who'd been standing quietly in the doorway, spoke up. That's what we're going to find out, starting tomorrow. The next morning at 6:45 a.m., Carla reported to the geriatric ward wearing patient care assistant scrubs, light blue instead of the nurse's dark blue she'd worn with such pride. The difference felt monumental. Aisha met her at the nurse's station. You'll be assigned to Mrs. Patterson in room 304. She's 78, recovering from a hip fracture, and she has a history of being dismissed by healthcare workers. She doesn't trust easily. Mrs. Patterson was an elderly black woman with sharp eyes and a guarded expression. When Carla entered her room, those eyes swept over her with immediate suspicion. "Another new one," Mrs. Patterson said. "You here to rush through my care so you can check your boxes?" The words hit like an arrow, perfectly aimed. Carla took a breath. "No, ma'am. I'm here to help you, however long it takes." "We'll see," Mrs. Patterson replied skeptically. The day was humbling in ways Carla had never imagined. She helped Mrs. Patterson to the bathroom. Intimate, unglamorous work she'd once considered beneath her skills. She changed bedding. She assisted with meals, cutting food into small pieces, waiting patiently when Mrs. Patterson's arthritis made eating slow. And she listened. Mrs. Patterson told stories about growing up in the segregated South, about raising 4 children while working as a seamstress, about her late husband who'd been a Pullman porter. Stories that had nothing to do with medical care and everything to do with seeing someone as a whole person. "You're different from the others," Mrs. Patterson said around 2 p.m. "You're actually listening. Why?" Carla thought about lying, about maintaining a professional distance. But Ruby's question echoed in her mind. "When did you stop seeing people?" "Because I forgot how to see patients as people," Carla said honestly. "And I hurt someone because of it. I'm trying to learn again, if you'll teach me." Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. "I'll think about it." It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a beginning. Over the next few weeks, Carla showed up every day. She was patient when Mrs. Patterson tested her with demands and complaints. She was present when Mrs. Patterson just needed someone to sit with her during lonely afternoons. She learned the names of Mrs. Patterson's grandchildren, remembered which photographs brought smiles, understood when silence was better than conversation. And slowly, grudgingly, Mrs. Patterson began to soften. One afternoon, 3 weeks into her probation, Mrs. Patterson said, "You know what the difference is between you and the other aides?" "What's that?" Carla asked. "You look at me like I matter, like my stories and my time are worth something. Most people can't wait to leave. You actually stay." Carla felt something shift in her chest. Not pride exactly, but something deeper. Purpose. Connection. The feeling she'd been chasing through efficiency metrics but had never found. This was what nursing was supposed to feel like. 6 months later, Carla stood before a review board that included Dr. Chen, Elena Vasquez, Aisha Williams, and 2 ethics professors. They'd reviewed her journal, observed her work, interviewed her patients. "Miss Jensen," Dr. Chen said, "you have completed your probationary period. The question before us is whether you have demonstrated genuine change or merely performed compliance. What do you believe?" Carla thought about Mrs. Patterson, who now greeted her with smiles, about Ruby, who she visited twice a week, about the other patients she had learned to see as people first, condition second. "I don't know if I've changed enough," Carla said honestly. "But I know I'm not the same person I was, and I know I want to keep learning. Not to get my license back, but because this work matters. These people matter. If you'll let me continue as a patient care assistant, I'd like to stay in geriatrics." The board members exchanged glances. Then Dr. Chen smiled, a real smile, warm and approving.
Your nursing license is reinstated, effective immediately. But we're going to honor your request. You'll remain in geriatrics as a registered nurse, working alongside Aisha Williams. Carla felt tears of relief and gratitude, not because she had gotten her license back, but because she had been given the chance to keep doing work that finally felt meaningful. That evening, Ruby visited the hospital for the first time since her cardiac event. She found Carla in Mrs. Patterson's room, the two of them laughing over old photographs. Ruby stood in the doorway, watching her granddaughter truly see her patient, truly be present. "There's my Carla. I knew you was still in there." Carla looked up and smiled. "I almost lost her forever. Nana, thank you for not giving up on me. Never, never." From her office, Dr. Chen observed the geriatric ward through the window. The culture was changing, slowly, one nurse at a time, one patient at a time. Aisha Williams had been promoted to nurse educator, training new staff in compassionate care. Tommy Jackson reported that elderly patients were being taken seriously in the ER. The metrics still mattered, but they no longer mattered more than people.
It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was better. And better was enough. Dr. Chen thought of Richard and sent a silent message to him. "I'm doing what I promised. I'm making sure what happened to you happens to fewer people. Watch over them with me." The hospital bustled with evening activity, but for once, the efficiency served the compassion instead of replacing it. And in room 304, Carla Jensen held Mrs. Patterson's hand and listened to another story, grateful for the second chance she'd almost refused, grateful for the hard path that had led her back to herself. Redemption, she'd learned, wasn't a moment, it was a practice. Daily, humble, and gloriously human. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.